Hey everybody, Shabba Nobody Else's Auto. We have something very, very unique to check out tonight. Was it a test mule? Was it a prototype? I don't know. I do know it's only got 154 miles on it. Actually it shows 248 kilometers because this car was built for the European market and it ended up in central Kansas. So anyway, when I look at this era of Chrysler, when you look at the late 80s and you look at performance and what was happening in the auto industry, you know, it's hard to ignore what Chrysler was doing in the late 80s. Now, I grew up on GM and I grew up on Buicks. And when, you know, of course, Dad worked at the Buick dealership. They got a Grand National in both 86, 87. Still absolutely love those cars. I've got one of the first turbo Regals built that I drove in high school, the 78 turbo Regal, which was carbureted, which you couldn't hardly tell it made any power. However, they were experimenting with something. Buick was the only normal production car you could get a turbo on. Porsche was using them, but as far as going and buying a normal passenger car with a turbo, Buick was the first one in 78. And they used that up till obviously the GNX in 87, which was kind of the pinnacle of it. But after that, you know, you had the 5.0 Mustang, which was a basic V8 engine, no power adders. The same thing with the tune port injection setup in the GTAs, the IROCs, and then of course Corvette. But it was hard to ignore what Chrysler was starting to do in the late 80s. Obviously, Carroll Shelby's involvement heavily with Chrysler in that point in time, the GLH Omni, turbochargers on small engines, experimenting with stuff that today is extremely commonplace. I mean, half the cars out there on the road today seems like come with a turbo. But back in the late 80s, this was all almost voodoo type stuff. You know, this was from another galaxy to be doing this. But that's where Chrysler was going. And then obviously that culminated into the massive V10 and the Viper. They were doing everything from turbo 4-cylinders, then the V10 was developed. They owned Lamborghini at the time. Chrysler was doing so many different things that we really saw the fruits of even today. Just announced SRT is back. So when you look at what happened at Chrysler in the last 40 years, starting in the late 80s with the turbo 4-cylinders up through the Viper, the Prowler, which wasn't a screamer, but the fact that they built it was crazy. The Hellcat, the Demons, the stuff that Chrysler has done to keep performance alive in the, in the American market has been amazing. That's where this weird little car comes in. Now, I like that era of Chrysler. I started with Chrysler in 97 in warranty administration, so I look at a lot of the stuff that happened in the 90s, going back to the late 80s, and you got to respect that type of stuff. Obviously, I love my Viper. I've got a 1990 Chrysler Maserati TC convertible, which is just a weird little car, but a lot of the guys that I trained with in Chrysler had those little TC Maseratis. I was like, I ought to have one just because I remember those guys having them. And that's kind of the same window that this car falls in. So like I said, is it a prototype? Is it a test mule? I have no clue. Maybe some of you guys know. Throw it up in the comments. Maybe you can help clarify some questions on this car. What we've got here, the 1990 Chrysler LeBaron GTC VNT Coupe, Euro Spec Edition. Now, from what I found, they made 132 VNT convertibles and 123 VNT coupes. This being Euro Spec, I have no idea if they made a run of these for Europe and this car didn't get shipped. Was this the test mule for a car that was designed to go to Europe with and see what they would do over there? Did it get built, never get shipped? Was this the only one they built as a test mule? Did they build a bunch of them and ship a boatload of them over and this one just didn't make the boat? I have absolutely no idea. However, a lot of you guys are probably wondering, how did this car end up in Kansas with 154 miles? Well, what happened to a lot of test mules and sometimes even prototype cars? They were obviously not available to be sold. They couldn't put them on the street. So what do they do with a lot of them? They either had to crush them or they donated them. And that's what happened to this car. This car was donated to a school. That's where you can't really see much of the sticker anymore, but that used to say donated by Chrysler Corporation. So what is it? What is the VNT? From what I've read, and I'm no expert on these things, it was a variable nozzle turbo that had different size vanes on the ring in the turbo that were controlled by a spring and a diaphragm. Chrysler was able to utilize the engine computer to help manage the pressure on that diaphragm and that spring to vary the amount of pressure the turbo put out. And I could be a little wrong on that, guys. I'm sure there's guys that know these things a lot better than I do. But that's what I learned from my quick study on them. This car, obviously, the worst part about it is after it was, you know, quit being used at the school, they shoved it outside behind the building and it sat outside for several years. So it has deteriorated some. A lot of the clear coat has worn off. A lot of the paint is still there. And then, of course, it was used in a school, so a lot of times that meant kids weren't always nice to it. So it's got a few dings and a few things like that in it. But it still is what it is. So let's check out some of the things that make this car so unique. Obviously, we see it does say Turbo GTC on the side of it. We'll just start right here on the front corner, and we notice, and this is all the way around, no side marker lights in this car at all. All 4 side marker lights have delete plates in them. They're, again, Euro spec car. So apparently in 1990, side marker lights were not required in Europe. As we come around the front of this little LeBaron, we see this was a very monochromatic type of color scheme. Basically, everything was either white and then black trim. You know, we didn't have a chrome grille, it was body color. Black trim around the windows, which is kind of odd when we look at the auto industry today and we look at how much trim has been blacked out now compared to using chrome. Almost kind of a predecessor to some of that. We see the intercooled VNT up here on the left headlight cover. And I think these cars used a unique wheel. I'm not sure. I haven't seen a lot of these wheels. These wheels got banged up from being on and off several times, I'm sure, while they were working on the car. So I would probably need to find some wheels if I ever did anything with this car. So if you had some wheels laying around, I might need them. Over here we see where the Chrysler sticker used to be on this side as well. And one thing you guys are probably wondering about, does this car have a VIN? Yes, it does have a normal VIN number on it. So, which has actually allowed me to title the car. So I do actually have a title on the car. It has a VIN number on the dash, just like a regular one. So that's why I'm wondering if this was, like I said, did they take a regular LeBaron and turn it into this? Was this a prototype for this car? Was it a test mule that was put together? Not sure. I do know one thing, the VIN actually does designate it as a VNT car. So one thing Chrysler was always good about was putting the engine in the VIN. This VIN actually designates this as a VNT turbo car. Inside, we see something else kind of interesting. This car is a stick. It is a factory 5-speed manual. No airbags, which by 90, you know, we were starting to see a lot of airbags. So no airbags, manual transmission. And if we look in here at the odometer, we can see it clearly shows 248 kilometers, which equates to 154 miles. This also actually, these have a boost gauge in them, as well as a full assortment of regular gauges along with the tach. Piece of trim loose here. Did have power windows, power seat, power mirrors, power locks. Fairly well equipped car. Radio is missing out of it. Did have an overhead console in it as well. The headliner's fallen down. There again, it sat outside for several years, unfortunately. And it also has an actual export sticker on it. So there again, was this just a car that didn't get shipped? Or was this the test mule for this design of car? Who knows? I'm hoping maybe we all learned something by doing this video. We'll go ahead and pop the trunk while we're here. And yes, I have actually kept this car inside since I got it. I did put it in this building. Inside the trunk, nothing too exciting. Does still have the front tag bracket in the package. But there again, of course, it's pretty much still a new car in there because it was never used. As we close the trunk, though, we do see something very unique. Look at this tag bracket. Much longer and narrower than a normal 12x6 US plate. And it actually has a flip up because there's your trunk key lock. Now, when we look down here, we do still have the normal spot on the rear bumper for a regular US plate. But this was set up for Euro, so it had to have this other tag bracket. You can see how much wider this is versus the normal slot for the US tag. So I believe all this stuff across the back would have been specific to this car. We'll come around over here to the other side. Up here in the greenhouse area, basically this thing is all standard LeBaron. We see our rear side marker deletes here as well. And we'll take a peek in here in the passenger side. There we see our stick shift sticking up a little better, our park brake. They did get the radio out of this thing at some point. Some kid may have needed it for his car, who knows, back in the day. But we've also got some of the factory literature still here with this car. Still in the original Chrysler envelope. The 90 LeBaron owner's manual. Owner information. Tire policies. Sound systems. And what appears to be the build sheet. So let's see what we got here. Does show us a GTC coupe with the 5-speed heavy-duty manual transmission. And this is a lot of the basic stuff in it. December 5th of 1989. Sold to Chrysler Overseas Sales. Shipped to, not sure what that is, SONA or SON Auto SA, not sure. Shipped through Cars and Concepts, St. Charles, Missouri. This car was built in St. Louis. So, export shipped through St. Charles. So, there again, what happened? It does appear as though it was built as an export unit. But what happened in the meantime? How many of these did they build? Did they build a boatload of these? And they're all in Europe? Did they just build this one and it never came together? Did they build a handful of them and ship them over? Don't really know. And let's see, this is just another copy of the same thing. So something happened in between going to Europe and ending up in Kansas. There again, did they start to build these and then kill the program? Did they build one and then kill the program? I have no clue. But you never know. Hopefully somebody will be able to shed some light on this thing for us, because I'm kind of at a loss. Obviously, the amount of cars that we go through here, you know, we see a lot of interesting stuff. This thing, I think, is really neat. So, apparently, like I said, it was supposed to be exported, but I'm curious, maybe they built this one and then killed the program, which would kind of put it into the test mule status. Who knows? But it's an interesting story and it's a fun mystery. One thing about these old cars, the stories that go with them are always so much fun. It's history. It's the history of the automotive world. It is progression, just like we talked about earlier. This was the stuff Chrysler was doing in the late 80s. The Shelby cars, the GLH cars, the little Daytonas, picking up IROC after Chevrolet dropped it. Because yes, there were actually IROC Daytonas. 1990 was the last year for an IROC Camaro, because then they were IROC Daytonas. Chrysler was doing so much stuff in that window, and this car is just a little tiny piece of that. Now, obviously, like we mentioned earlier, rare does not always equate to valuable, and I think that's definitely what we've got here. I think the car is super cool. I've not had it running. I put a battery in it, it turns over good. I hit it with a little starting fluid and it tries to hit. So I don't think it's getting any fuel. Like I said, it was parked several years ago, parked out behind the building at the school shop, and they eventually disbanded their automotive program. The car was sold off into private hands, and then I ended up with it after that. So, weird deal. Maybe some of you guys can shed some light on some of this stuff for me. I think it's a cool car. I think it's a unique car. I think it is a little snapshot in history of what Chrysler was doing that leads us literally to here we are almost 40 years later with the amount of turbocharging and things like that that are happening in the auto industry. And this car is just a little snippet of the beginning of some of that. So anyway, I hope you guys like it. I was geeked about it. I thought it was a cool little piece of history. I'm excited to have it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to shove it back in this building for now to keep it out of the elements so that hopefully it doesn't get any worse till figure out what to do with it. Or maybe some of you guys can enlighten us with a little more on some of this particular car, because it's pretty odd that I come up with something that I don't know anything about and can't find anything about on the internet. So I'm really curious to see what you guys know about it and whether anybody knows any more about it than I do. So all I know, it's an interesting car, and we'll see what else we can learn about it. I'm going to put it back in storage here to keep it out of the elements until we can find something else about it. So there it is, kind of a weird duck, but kind of a neat little car with some cool history. But before we wrap up, though, I bet you want to see that turbocharger, don't you? Let's go ahead and pop this hood real quick. Take one quick look under the hood. So under the hood, this looks like, literally, like I said, a basic 2.2 turbo. Nothing exotic, nothing exciting under here. Basically exactly what we're familiar with when we look at these little 2.2 turbo Chrysler engines. Just a basic setup, just a different turbo and some different controls. Was really about the only thing that was odd on them. So when you open the hood, you really didn't see much difference in them. But there again, it's just a weird little car. Like I said, was apparently supposed to be in production for Europe, but there again, looking at the internet, you can't find anything on them. So if they did ship any of these to Europe, they didn't ship very many of them. Or did they build this one with the plans of starting to produce them and then not? Who knows? All I know is it ended up in a school. It's got 154 miles on it. It's a Euro spec VNT turbo with a 5-speed manual. And here it is in our collection in Kansas. So what am I going to do with it? I have no idea. For now, I'm going to tuck it back in this building so it doesn't get any worse, and then figure it out. Like I said, I've kind of got a soft spot for this era of Chrysler and some of the cool stuff that they did, because they were thinking out of the box. Shelby's development, things like that. You know, Shelby's involvement with the Viper was designed to be a modern day Cobra. You know, the first Vipers had no windows, you know, no traction control, no nothing. It was a massive engine with a manual transmission that was meant to do one thing and do it really well and really fast. So for Chrysler to even be thinking along those lines in this era is crazy. So I've got a lot of respect for this era of Chrysler. You know, on top of the fact that I ended up going to work for them out of college. So for now, I'm going to tuck this thing back away. Like I said, I've got my Maserati TC. You can check out the video on that car as well. And I'm going to tuck this thing away and see what happens. You know, I think you put a fuel pump in it, I think you can get it running. It's one of those cars that obviously is not worth doing a full restoration on. Probably could paint it and make a pretty decent little car out of it. But really don't know. Like I said, I'm curious to see what I may hear out of some of you guys. Maybe you can shed some light on this thing, because I really just don't know. All I know is it's neat. It's a little snapshot in history of things that we see regularly today with the, you know, just like we mentioned, the turbocharging was so common today, the monochromatic paint scheme, the gray and the black trim, all things that, you know, literally they were just ahead of the curve on, that we saw happen with this car that was built in December of '89 as a 1990 Euro spec LeBaron GTC VNT Coupe. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely a little outside of the box, but anyway, definitely hit that subscribe button, guys. Check out what we've got going on. If you've got any questions about any of the stuff you see on the channel, just give me a call, 620-786-4428. with a couple thousand cars and trucks here on the ground at Nobody Else's Auto, we've got a pretty wide selection of inventory. So give me a holler if you've got any questions or need anything for your project. Emails, texts, they never work. Just give me a call, 620-786-4428. What we can do in a couple minutes on the phone can take weeks back and forth with emails. There's so many variables in these old cars that getting as much information out of you, year, make, model, body style, parts you need, things like that, so critical to see if I can help you out with your project. So definitely mixing some stuff up tonight a little bit. Even though this car doesn't seem old, it is 35 years old. It is an antique in Kansas, even though it is a 1990, which is kind of weird to think about. But it sure enough is. And it's a weird one. So check out the channel, check out some of the other videos, hit that subscribe button. Hope you enjoyed the weird little GTC VNT LeBaron, and maybe we'll all learn something with some help from some of you guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, everybody. We sure hope to see you soon on the next video.